Bloodstained. Metroidvanias are definitely one of my favorite video game genres. I don't know what it is, but there's something exciting yet relaxing about exploring a massive interconnected map with plenty of secrets to reveal and an atmosphere that complements the map well. I have yet to play a Metroidvania that I don't like. But before this year, I only ever experienced half of the Metroidvania genre, only ever having really played Metroid games, Shadow Complex, and a bit of Axiom Verge. So when I played Castlevania Symphony of the Night for the first time several months ago, I fell in love with the genre all over again, possibly even more than before. I think that's because Symphony of the Night put a lot more emphasis on the combat part of the game. The bosses in that game are hard on a first playthrough, and I really enjoyed it for that. Over the last year, I've heard about Bloodstained and how it's a really good Metroidvania, especially if you love Symphony of the Night. So since I really enjoyed Symphony of the Night earlier this year, I just had to get it when it was on sale during the Steam Summer Sale. And then I didn't touch it until just last month. But I'm really glad that I did. So let's go ahead and jump right in. There's a reason Bloodstained Ritual of the Night has such a similar title to Symphony of the Night. Koji Igarashi came back after he left Konami to lead the development of this game. Of course, most people that are familiar with this game probably already know this. Except for me, because I apparently live under a rock and I didn't know about this. Maybe it's because I had basically no interest in Castlevania at the time, but back in 2015, Igarashi and team put up a Kickstarter for a new, highly requested Metroidvania game. The Kickstarter campaign pretty much follows your standard video game Kickstarter fanfare circa 2015, in some of the most amusing ways, and shows some kick-ass concept art and awesome stretch goals, including a companion prequel game that ended up becoming Bloodstained Circle of the Moon. Needless to say, there's a reason that this was one of the most successful Kickstarter campaigns of all time, amassing $5.5 million. Seriously, how did I not hear about this until it released last year? I'm just gonna put it bluntly, I didn't really think the story in this game was that good. Don't get me wrong, I'm not disappointed because of that, since I was really just expecting a good Metroidvania in the gameplay department, and so I wasn't so concerned about the story. This goes mostly without saying. This section will contain spoilers of the stories of Bloodstained, as well as Castlevania Symphony of the Night, so if you're worried about spoilers for either of these games, skip to this time. Simply put, I think that the story in Bloodstained is super derivative and tropey. There's a reason that in that spoiler warning I put in Symphony of the Night, because wow, it really copies a lot from Symphony of the Night in terms of general story beats. You explore the castle knowing that Richter is the one causing all of this, so you travel through the castle to the end to defeat him. But oh no, killing him didn't resolve anything, and it turns out you weren't supposed to kill him after all, so you get the bad ending. So then you have to explore around a little bit more throughout the castle, and get the holy glasses from Maria, which lets you get rid of the thing that's controlling Richter, and then you have to defeat Shaft, who had been controlling Richter all along. Though this game at the very end did do something a little bit different, with the plot twist being that Dominique, the exorcist that claimed to be helping you this whole entire time, was trying to summon the big bad demon Baal this whole time and was trying to get the Liber Legaeth, the book that lets her do this. But I called Dominique being the big bad at the end of the game from the moment I met her. It seemed really obvious to me from the get-go. She gave me super suspicious vibes, even in the first cutscene, where she already knows a lot about the connection between Jebel and Miriam, and also best how to appeal to Miriam to get her to do things for her. And for someone who's presented as a major character early on, who's the reason Miriam even arrived there, she's surprisingly absent compared to Johannes or the other characters you meet that appear to be antagonists at first, namely Zangetsu and Alfred, only appearing in the weirdest, most suspicious of places, like for instance the underground research lab. This is when she's supposed to be doing things for the church, like looking after Anne and making sure she's okay, so that seems super sus. Honestly, speaking of Dominique, I kind of have issues with her motivations in general. Because at the end, she reveals she wanted to get the power to destroy God, since God let so many people die in the incident 10 years prior, including her parents. But yet she's okay with people dying in the wake of her quest to kill God, just because they were weak? That doesn't really make sense to me, but maybe we can just chalk it up to her being crazy and her lust for power. Now, all that said, I don't think the story is bad either. It does a really good job of establishing the in-game lore right off the bat and stays consistent with itself, and throws in cool snippets you can read throughout the castle placed inside books. And besides Dominique, the character's motivations made sense. Just forget the story of Symphony of the Night, and it'll all be good. Now, I wanted to quickly go back to that concept art piece that's shown on the game's Kickstarter page. I really like it, both the UI and the game itself. The UI in the corner plays off the whole crystal thing, perfect considering the crystals embedded in Miriam's skin are what lets her control the demon's power. And the almost anime art style totally makes me think of the Castlevania anime, which to be fair premiered after this Kickstarter was funded. So why does the final product look like this? I mean, it looks fine, but I don't know, it seems to lack that charm that's present in the concept art. The in-game UI still follows the whole Gothic style, which is good, but it's really just bland in comparison if you ask me, opting for plain-looking glass bars with some metal flourishes surrounding and a generic ye olde English font for the numbers. It does at least have the flower crystals in there, and it does better match the 3D style that they ended up going with, but I prefer the more striking version myself. The 3D environments in general look kinda bland, when there aren't intense lighting effects, which do admittedly look pretty cool. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't really like how Miriam's face looks in that 3D model, or anyone else's faces for that matter. But, given that this is an indie game, I'm willing to cut a lot of slack as far as my personal standards go. I certainly couldn't do much better myself, and I'd say it looks good enough that it still fits that Gothic style well. At least the environments look better than ones I've seen by much larger developers. Oh, and I didn't actually throw in a section for this, but since that felt too negative for how I actually feel about the game, I have to throw in this point, since it kinda goes hand in hand with the art style. The music in this game is top notch. If you like music in the Castlevania games, I'm sure you'll love the music in Bloodstained. I definitely did. And to conclude with even more positivity about the game, we're finally getting to the good stuff, the gameplay. I mean, what do you expect with Igarashi leading the project? It's a damn good Metroidvania in the gameplay department. It takes inspiration from pretty much all the Igavanias, from Symphony of the Night to Order of Ecclesia, and executes them well. The shards kind of act like glyphs from Order of Ecclesia, though they're strictly for secondary attacks and movement, as opposed to the primary attack. It's a good mix of the previous systems in my book, since it gives more of a purpose to magic while not forcing all of your regular attacks to use magic. Another cool thing is that though there aren't command input spells like in Symphony of the Night, there are command input special attacks that you can do that depend on the specific weapon you're using. I didn't bother learning them myself, since they're specific to only a few weapons instead of the general weapon types, which would be easier to learn in my opinion, but it's still cool that they're there, for more flexibility and complexity in the combat. Speaking of flexibility, all the different weapon types were super well balanced in my opinion. Since there are different types of physical and elemental damage, it's advantageous even to switch often, and the game gives you shortcut shards to quickly switch between the sets. By the end of the game, I found myself constantly swapping between a sword, a spear, and a whip, and that barely scratches the surface of the different weapon types you can use. The combat in this game doesn't really innovate from Castlevania, but where it excels is taking the systems from the previous Igavanias and integrating them all super well, and making sure that the different weapon types were balanced. Also, the bosses are hard as shit, even on normal difficulty, which is great. And the large, interconnected dungeon that most Metroidvanias are known for is definitely there in Bloodstained. And wow, is it huge! They didn't pull any punches or cheap out an inverted castle like Symphony of the Night, and each area is distinctly memorable enough to where I didn't ever have trouble finding them when I had to backtrack. And the progression from one area to another made sense. The game made it clear when you weren't able to explore a specific area just yet until you got a specific key item or shard. There were really only two moments where I didn't really like how the game handled that, and that's getting the passport for the train and moving around in water in the underground waterway. The passport requires you to talk to the vampire Odie after you get a photo from Dominique, which you have to get when you get the silver bromide, and I don't think the game ever even hinted that this is a sequence of events you needed to take. Though it's possible I missed that. Full disclosure, I had to look that up to get what I was supposed to do. As for the water movement, the issue I had with that is because you're only able to move around in the water with a shard that you have to get randomly from an enemy that only exists in the water, rather than some boss, like other movement abilities like double jump and invert. Somehow I didn't need to look up a guide for that one though, but that's only because I'm bloodthirsty and kill pretty much every single enemy I see in these types of games. That said, the fact that it was only 2 moments I felt that way as opposed to the myriad of times that it happened to me in Symphony of the Night shows to me that they definitely put a lot of thought into the exploration aspect too, and I really appreciate that. So yes, this game is absolutely fantastic in the gameplay department, as to be expected. In that regard, it's definitely a true spiritual successor to the exploration-based Castlevanias. That was a lot of words to say that I really love this game. Sure, It isn't without its flaws, and it sticks way too closely to resembling Symphony of the Night, but it's still a fun as hell game and still manages to make itself distinct from the Igavanias it's a spiritual successor to. I definitely highly recommend it. And the best part is, this game is also available on the Xbox Game Pass. I had some issues recording this game when I was playing on PC, because recording on my PC while playing the game introduced a crap ton of input lag in the game for some reason, so I ended up playing the game on Xbox instead. If you do go that route though, be aware that the Xbox version sometimes just randomly crashes when going in between rooms, especially when you've gone to the store or crafted stuff through the alchemy system, so make sure you save often. Or just get it on PS4 or PC, or Switch if you like your games portable in 540p.